Namaste. Good evening and welcome. Let us begin with a prayer. Om. 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 Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhasha Kartau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Guruvatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om Sahanau Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karavavai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace be, peace be, peace be. Hari Om. So, we were seeing Upanishad launched this profound statement at the beginning of the chapter, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. This Brahman is the very isness, existence of everything, the very light of lights, consciousness, and then non-separate from anything, whole and complete. And further, that Brahman is equated to you. Tasmadva e tasmad atmana akasha sambuddha. We saw that particular mantra. So now we're in a mode of reflection upon regaining our status as that Brahman, seeing the unity there between the self, Atman, and the Brahman. So there's a kind of subject-object analysis that's taking place. And the term for that here is the pancha kosha viveka. So we're seeing that the person is composed of 5 different layers, it seems. Those layers are the intricacies or expressions of the Brahman, but where we as an individual, a jiva, seem to identify with, mistaking our deeper, true nature as the Brahman. So this method of subject-object analysis, as we're reflecting upon these different sheaths, we're seeing that I stand apart, but at the same time, that sheath is never away from me. So I'd rather say, instead of separating things, it's more of including more in the folds of our awareness, and then really recognizing that we are that awareness. So let us take up where we left off. We were discussing the vitality in us, called pranamaya kosha. So let's look at that mantra that begins with pranam deva anuprananti. See if you can find that in the book. Pranam deva anuprananti. So when we're negating things, meaning we're trying to find the essential self, because upon discovering that, then that mahavakya deeply resonates and becomes real, because we're seeing the self free from all upadhis, which means free from all sense of limiting adjuncts. To do that, we're doing this method of analysis. But there, that kind of negation is an inclusion. We're seeing the special relationship between what is satyam, lasting, and what is appearing? Mithya. So when we negate, that doesn't become asata, non-existent. We're acknowledging we experience it for sure. But who is that experiencer? What is the truth of you? So that's a special relationship that Vedanta gives us, satya mithya viveka. All that becomes clear as we look into these different dimensions of our person. So this dimension we saw was the pranamaya kosha. It began by saying pranam deva anuprananti. This particular dimension of our person is the gods, it seems, indriyas, the senses are nourished by the prana. And so are the humans, animals, all creatures. Prano hi bhutanam ayuhu. It's the very life of all. We also saw that when you meditate on the prana here, that the Rishi says you gain your full lifespan. So the Upanishadic idea of full lifespan, you even find this in Isha Upanishad, is Chatagum Samaha, is 100 years. That's what they say. Puja Swamiji extends that another 20, living that robust, dynamic life. Why is that? Is because actually, when you convert that desire into a positive, creative tool, that desire gives you tremendous energy to wake up in the morning and live a joyous life. So here, by meditating, sarvameva ta ayuryanti ye pranam brahmopasate, ayuhu, you really get to exercise and live the full span of life, it seems. So the first thing that was said is that the senses, anuprananti, those devas live on the prana. That's an interesting and important note because by having a relationship with the breath, proper breathing habits, and all of that, we find that the senses are actually nourished by that. And that's why yoga is so practical and useful, is that as one starts to begin engaging in the practice of pranayama, or even just watching the breath, you find that your perception of the world does change. It becomes brighter. You're more alive to your environment. That's because those senses that you use to touch or contact with the world are nourished by the prana. Prana is also sarvayusham. Prana is also the life-giving principle. And then meditating on prana gives us our full lifespan. So we saw too that this particular kosha is also inner, other than the physical sheath, and that it has limbs, the wings, a head, the wings, and the tail, trunk. So we discussed prana, that kind of in and out moving breath, vyana, the circulatory breath, the very presence which the consciousness is flowing out to the edge of the skin. Why we can say that this is me, but this isn't me. Vyana. Then apana, that downward moving force all the way to the soles of the feet. Then we saw samana around the navel circle, that transformative wind. And then also udana, which here it was called prithivi, the earth, bucham, at the tail. So practically speaking, the way that we are identifying with the pranamaya koshas in terms of our energy level. So when you say, I'm tired, or I'm exhausted, or I'm energized, or I'm dizzy, or all the different physiological functions that we go through. For example, in udana, that upward moving force, sneezing, blinking, vomiting, throwing up the emergence of thought, all that upward kind of wind, we can identify with that. And on a subtle note, we can also identify with our sense of vitality. So which waxes and wanes. As a yogi, we try to stabilize that, but we're seeing it's made of parts. We're seeing that you're aware of it. We're seeing that that makes you something other than and deeper than that. And it's a kosha because You're not limited by the prana. So we go further in our inquiry. There's a beautiful mantra too we find in Kena Upanishad. We actually studied this. It says, Yet pranena na praniti, yena prana praniyate, tadeva brahmatvam vidhi, nedam yadidam upasate. That statement that even the Rishi said, sometimes we can think that the prana is the supreme God, but it's that very presence by which the prana is directed to the various senses. You are something more. Tvam Brahma. You are that Brahman. So let's keep seeing how that's possible. Now we enter into a discussion of something subtler, more inner, and also to where a lot of mistakes, the majority of mistakes are made with reference to how we understand ourselves. Now we're going to explore in the next two koshas the whole landscape of mind. So it requires a little patience, and we're kind of looking at this together, and we'll explore all the different dimensions of how we shape and identify around mind. So let's chant this next mantra. I'll chant it first, and then you can repeat after me. Tasyesha eva sharira atma yat purvasya tasmadva etasmaat pranamayat anyontara atma manomayah te naisha purnaha sava esha purushavida eva tasya purushavidatam anvayam purushavidah tasya yajureva shiraha ऋग्दक्षिणः पक्षः सामोत्तरः पक्षः आदेश आत्मा अथर्वङ्गिरसपुच्छं प्रतिष्ठा तदप्येष श्लोको भवति. Okay, let's chant it together. Tasyesha eva
Tasyesha eva
sharira atma
sharira atma
yah purvasya
yah purvasya
tasmadva
tasmadva
etasmaat
etasmaat
pranamayat
pranamayat
anyontara
anyantara
atma
atma
manomayah.
manomaya
That's the key there, manomaya. That's what we're looking at now, the mind. Te naisha purnaha
te naisha purnaha
sava esha
savaisha
purushavida purushavida eva
purushavida eva
tasya purushavidatam
tasya purushavidatam
anvayam purushavidaha
अन्वयं पुरुषविदः
tasya yajureva shiraha
तस्य ययुरेव शिरः
ऋग्दक्षिणः पक्षः
ऋग्दक्षिणः पक्षः
सामोत्तरः पक्षः
सामुत्तरः पक्षः
आदेश आत्मा
आदेश आत्मा
अथर्वङ्गिरसपुच्छं प्रतिष्ठा
अत्र अङ्गिरस पुच्छं प्रतिष्ठा
तदप्येष श्लोको भवति.
तदप्येष श्लोको भवति.
So you may be seeing some similar movement as we
Yes.
look at these mantras. There's a certain order to it, a kind of rhythm. So when you chant this, if you ever get the privilege of listening to this Taittiriya Upanishad being chanted in a group, there's this kind of rhythm, especially as they increase with this repetition and all the koshas. It's beautiful. So now let's see what it says. Tasyesha eva sharira atma yat purvasya tasmadva etasmat pranamayat. So tasyesha eva sharira atma. There's an indwelling atma, deeper than the pranamaya. Yat purvasya, of the former. Tasmadva etasmat pranamayat, of that pranamaya kosha. It's also anyaha, other than, and antara. It's other than
Right.
the pranamaya, and it's also inner more, antara atma, and that's known as manomaya. So here, what we're exploring is called manas, your mind, the emotional self, very deep. And that emotional self also is composed of our memory. So in Vedanta, we call these two dimensions of mind called manas and also chittam. Those are the technical words. Chittam means your memory. Manas means your emotions. And also the outward going mind, the mind that's connected to your senses, that you can perceive the world. That chittam too is very deep because chittam also has a conscious level, the very thoughts that are arising into our mind, and an unconscious dimension by which they spring up from. So we're going to explore all that. This is called manomaya, and we have a tendency to identify with it, a very strong one. Why it's called a kosha. Te nesha purnaha sava esha purushavida eva tasya purushavidatam. It's also taking the same shape. So that's an interesting idea. It's filling purnaha. It's filling the pranamaya kosha. It's giving life to the pranamaya kosha. It's the same shape as that purusha. Now, what is this bird? Again, it's conceived of as a bird, as we're taking flight through the Viveka. So as we're looking into this, what is this bird composed of? What is this particular sheath made of? Here, it requires a little bit of unpacking because of the cultural context of the way it's described. But I'll show us how it's very applicable to our lives, and there's deep implication behind it. Here, the head, wings, chest, and tail are conceived of as the Vedas and the instruction that one receives through them. But let's look at first which Vedas are correlated to which part of the bird, and then I'll help us understand how is that applicable to our life. How are we to understand that? And let's also look at some ways that we can commit the mistake of identifying ourselves with the mind. By pointing that out, that knowledge gives us the freedom to recognize I am something more, I am deeper, and also that I am not tainted or never disturbed or never subject to the fluctuation of the mind. So just by pointing it out, we get that release. So that's the whole process here. That's the process of this yoga, abhyasa and vairagyam. You watch, then you detach, and then that's where you find your transcendence. So you have to watch first, but then after you watch, then you have to recognize, oh, I'm more, I'm other than that. That's pervaded by me. So this way we go. So tasya shiraha, shiraha means the head. Tasya yajureva shiraha. The yajurveda is composed of this head of the bird. Yajurveda is mostly ritual. So you can make a note of that if you're taking notes, because that will help us kind of get more insight into how we see our mind related to this. So the head is the ritual, Yajurveda, Shiraha. Rig Dakshina Pakshaha. The right wing is the Rigveda. Rigveda is composed of mantra and also involves a lot of repetition. So those are some key words to kind of consolidate what Rig is composed of. Mantra. We've talked about that before. Rig Veda is that primary source book in which there's the Vedas glorifying the nature. So the right wing is said to be Rig Veda. Then Samottara Pakshaha, Uttara, the left wing is the Samaveda. Samaveda is connected to song, and it's also related to the seasons. Uh, the chest of this bird is Adesha Atma. Here again, Atma means the chest. Adesha means instructions, the instructions that you receive. This plays a big role in our mind, in the shaping of our mind. We'll see that more. So Adesha Atma, instruction, is the chest of this bird. Now what's its tail? Atarvangi rasa pucham pratishtha, the Atharvana Veda. Atharvana Veda. Atharvana Veda is made up of medicines, food, and skill sets. So Atharvana Veda is, we were seeing at the start of our talk on Taittiriya, the Atharvana is, sometimes they relate it to magic or sorcery, things like that. But it's really just particular mantras, from my understanding, mantras that are used for a specific purpose. There, the intonation and chanting of the pitch and all that has to be really proper, because the Rishi was saying that through that sound, you could invoke certain powers and abilities, but used for healing purposes or require or desire or acquiring certain desires, aims in life. So at Tadavana Veda, we find mantras for creating kind of medicines and working with different kind of skill sets. There's different kind of vidya involved there. So the tail of this mind is the Tadavana Veda. So it's other than, it's more inner, it's Purusha Vedaha, it's the same shape of the Purusha. And Anu, it's closely relating or following that Pranamaya Kosha. And it's made up of these Vedas, with the chest being instruction. So what are we to think of this? It's kind of interesting. Mind is mostly, we're experiencing mind at present as a series of thoughts, and the correlating feelings associated with them. And that's kind of our emotional landscape. So here we're looking at how emotions are really, what is the heart of our emotional landscape? Mind is typically spoken of its nature being sankalpa vikalpa. When we're more identified or um, flowing with the mind without getting a deeper sense of our inner intelligence, we find that we're in a state of decision indecision, sankalpa vikalpa. So mind is always moving and kind of moving out to with the senses. Hence why pratyahara, being able to have the mind rest back with the senses. So different ways we experience that are emotions such as kama, feeling that lust or excitement for something, and then that desire that wells up in us that I need to have that. That's one kind of mode of mind. Or yeah, like the sankalpa vikalpa. You have an idea and then a counter thought. You walk out. Did I set the alarm? Uh, yes. I'm not sure. Let me go back and check. So that's where you're identifying or mind is more active. Shraddha is another quality mind can go through, that faith. But then also the lack of it, ashraddha. You're always doubting, samshayam. These are states of mind. I'm just kind of giving you some ideas here to think on. Dhriti, steadiness. The feeling that, oh, I've got my path ready, or I know what I'm doing today. I've got a certain kind of steadiness. Or anavasthana. We find that in Yoga Sutra. You feel that you've got somewhere and then you're losing it. You're slipping back, falling back. Hari, modesty. This is all different kinds of landscapes of how we experience mind. That feeling of hari, modesty. Or di, understanding. Be, fear. All these words. Be, fear. So mind is so vast, but it's something that you're aware of, shining in your awareness, something known to you. Then alone you can see the movement of mind. So that consciousness is lighting up the mind, pervading the mind. What's that consciousness? It's not an object, it's the subject. So our eye is shifting very deep here. So here at this level, this is the level where, as a spiritual seeker or a seeker of truth, we have to have a certain kind of inner resolution, a certain kind of resolution of mind. We're looking for shama at this level. Guiding the senses back, dhamma, using them appropriately, and then also feeling that sense that I'm settled and settling my account with my history, my emotions and memories. That's why at this level we relate with the Ishvara. Something I find is quite interesting is there's a statement in Shiva Sutra. This is Chittam Mantraha, that mind is actually mantra, word. The word is mind. That's how we experience mind, through word and sound, vibration. So that gives us some insight too why the Rishi may be saying that the Vedas are the form, the body of this mind. So I want to look at that a little bit more. Let's go step by step and see maybe how the mind is shaped by the word in this way. So I use the word shape because uh, when we're not living in the light of awareness, we have the tendency to operate or express our life through what I would call conditioned tendencies, where we're following certain patterns of life, shaping our way towards feeling safe or belonging or dignity in order to feel I'm okay, to feel that you're a whole or complete person. And we're already recognizing the limitation of that. To a certain degree, that's necessary. But up to a point, we have to kind of mature beyond that and see that my identity is much greater and vaster than that. No amount of um, extending my security beyond the limit or extending my sense of accomplishment beyond the limit is going to give me lasting peace and joy. So we typically at this level are operating or guiding our life by what we've been conditioned in, our past, and our various experiences. Those are summed up in these Vedas. So let's see. When the Rishi says the head is Yajureva, Yajureva Shiraha, the Yajur Veda here, I was saying, means ritual. So I would like to interpret that as your personal experience in life. So just all of the experiences that you go through, which really make up the head of this mind. There's a huge amount of impression that takes place at the first 12 years of development in childhood. That goes a long way in this shaping. A lot of likes and dislikes are created during that time. So the initial way that you're learning how to become more and more independent as you grow. So I would say your personal experience is the head. Now, what about the Rig Veda as the right wing? The Rig Veda is composed of, I was saying, repetition or mantra. I'm going to interpret this as your family, your religious culture, and also the people you are around in your community, like your neighborhood, perhaps. So those who you see regularly, those who you're in close proximity with, that plays a large factor in the way that we process the world through our mind. So our mind is how we process and interpret the world. We interpret it um, through the cognition of sensation, and then the word associated with that. So your family, your intimate family group, has a big role to play in the way that um, you're processing all of this. Same with your religion and those you're in close communion with. The other wing, left wing, is Sama, Samaveda. Sama, I was saying, was connected too with the season, song and season. So perhaps this particular part or dimension of our mind is very much influenced by our environment, like those broader forces in nature, and or it could be our climate and conditioning based upon where we live. For example, a child of the mountains is going to behave a lot differently than the child of a city, and the certain way that they shape themselves and organize their emotions will be different. I've kind of joked before about this, about seeing a kind of stark difference when I find myself included coming from a more northern, colder climate, the certain tightness in the speech or sense of organization or things being much more together, and then the sort of looseness and flowingness of those coming from the south. like a warmer climate like Kerala. I get to see those kind of differences and meet lots of different people at the ashram. It's really fascinating to me how even that influences our speech. Like if you've ever listened to Malayalam, it's just all rolling of the tongue in the mouth, whereas English much more closed, or a language like German or something, very hard and then closed off, but much colder climate. And two, think about, depending upon that environment, the food that you're eating, that food is also getting converted to mind. So in some regions, no vegetables are even growing. So very difficult to procure all the different kinds of vegetables. So you're mostly eating more meat and things like that, which is influencing the mind. So sama. You can even think about that too, being situated in that certain context, you just day-to-day decisions, how much that impacts upon your mind. For example, living in Kalamazoo, we need a car. So when we want to pick up some vegetables or go to this bank or whatever, it means now operating a vehicle, operating on the rules of the road, and the interaction that you experience there. So all of that is influencing the mind. Now, what about this chest of the mind? Here, the Rishi says adesha. Adesha means the instructions you're given. I would say that those instructions shaping the mind could be not only what we receive from our parents and teachers, but also to kind of a social belief system. So, for example, in different cultures, you'll have different sort of sets of beliefs that are shared, and you relate and shape your way around them. Like I'll give you an example. One common belief that's popular in the West is if you work harder and faster, you'll be more successful. That need not be true, but that's a kind of attitude or belief that we adopt here based upon a very extreme materialistic pursuit. So we have this idea that you work hard and fast, and then you keep trying to increase your efficiency, and then that will lead to being more successful in life. So that's a kind of social belief and what we're told, and it influences our mind. That's one example of adesha. Or it could be if you don't get a college degree, then you'll be working in fast food. Those are kind of like statements or teachings that we were told growing up that shape our mind. So there's a lot we could explore there, but just so we can keep moving. What about Atharvana, the base or the tail? Atharvana, we were saying, was like kind of the medicine or skill sets. I would like to interpret this as the institutions that we go to, or the education system that we were a part of. You could even look at maybe the healthcare system, how that's structured. So that also is influencing too the tools that we use. For example, we're using laptop, cell phone, GPS, all these different things, all these sort of tools, skills, institutions, all of this goes along in shaping the mind. This level of mind, which we're talking about as our emotions, our emotional landscape. So this is just one practical way you can look at how all of our mind is set up. And looking at it is possible because you are aware. You are that awareness. You can see these movements. You can see your tendencies. And that therefore, using the buddhi, you can intervene. So that the power is with you. The power is with you to reshape and reorganize the mind. So as I was saying here, what we tend to find is that here we also experience that emotion of sadness and sorrow. So as a student of the Vedanta or as a meditator, our job too is also to ask for help and reorganize the mind by changing our language. Since we're finding that this mind is mostly made up of the language that we've adopted, the words that we use, we can re-script or reshape the mind by proper understanding and working with our language. That's why the study of Upanishad is so important. We're using words in a very systematic and organized way to reshape. We also too connect here with the very order of mind, and that order is Ishvara. Meaning there's a reason why you're experiencing your mind in this way. So that relating with Ishvara manifests as feeling that my mind is not crazy, my mind is not a problem, my mind is a friend. It's showing me what I've been practicing, what I've been engaged in, what I've listened to. It's just bubbling up and presenting itself to me this way. So that way you have a much more relaxed and open disposition. The mind can also be sharpened and find its deeper roots of connection through chanting the pranava, the om. That's how you connect with that Ishvara too. Chanting mantra. Because mind is mantra. So you connect with the very source of mind. Mind is essentially Ishvara, actually. That's all. But with the feeling it's my mind, my problems, that's where we run into a lot of trouble. So, tasya yajureva shiraha rigdakshinah pakshaha samuttara pakshaha adesha atma tarvangirasa pucham pradishtha. Now, regarding this, there's a shloka. Again, Rishi backs it up. There's some other Veda mantra that's discussing what insight or what special insight we should know about mind. So, what I'll say too is sometimes the pedagogic tactic of Vedantins is to outright dismiss mind, and then also dismiss or kind of speak negatively amongst the emotional profile. But I'll say, as a spiritual seeker, those emotions can develop incredible power and energy that really fills and makes life much more colorful. So we're not trying to get rid of emotions. We're trying to let emotions be our mode of expression, our creative tool, versus getting carried away in our emotions. So, but we have a tendency to stop there. And even in the spiritual pursuit, we can become emotional and excited by something that we may hear or that we may find inspiring or uplifting, but then think that that's it. I got an inspiration, or I got that feeling of goosebumps, listening to these teachings. But then we just stop there. We don't see the deeper truth of it. So here, it's interesting because the sloka that's given, this next shloka we're going to take up, wants us to see that the emotions are not the final destination. It can be easy to feel that when we have higher or more illuminating emotions, that that is the real truth. But it's also, we're seeing it's made up of parts. It's subject to change. It's a sharira. It's a kind of body. Sharira means that which can disintegrate. And it's not our final destination. So let's look at this next, what the Rishi says. Yato vacho nivartante apraapya manasa saha anandam brahmano vidvan nabibheti kadachaneti tasyesha eva sharira atma yaf purvasya. Okay, you can chant after me. Yato vacho. Can everybody find it?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't find it.
It may be still packed in that. Do you see where we left off? Tadapyesha sloko bhavati.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's the end of
After
section
that,
4.
intelligence and bliss. Yeah.
Oh,
But
and
that's-
what comes after that in your text?
Section 5, intelligence and bliss, and
Okay, but what's it say as the mantra?
Vijnanam.
Vijnanam, yeah.
Okay, but then the next, like the Sanskrit, what's it say?
Vijnanam yajnam tanute karmani tanute apicha.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Okay.
It seems to be missing in that book.
No, I'm using this book, and it says the same when you obtain Yato Vacho Nivar.
Yeah, that should be there. I
Yeah,
think there's
it's
just an
chapter 4. It's called chapter 4 in this book.
okay. I think they have a printed copy of the Upanishad I sent. I think that particular mantra here is missing in their edition. So we'll go over it because it's very important. And then maybe I'll make sure that you get that after class, or also provide a version that has it. So uh, I ask for your patience here. You can just listen and then do your best to try to follow. So this is an important landmark here
Yeah.
because the Rishi is saying that um, mind and emotions, that language and speech, retreat. They can't reach the truth because the truth is so much more, but they're never away from the truth. So let's see what it says. Um, yeah, Sat, if you want to repeat,
Okay.
yato vacho
Yato Vacho
nivartante
Nivartante
apraapya
Apraapya
manasa saha
Manasa Saha
anandam
Anandam
brahmano vidvan
Brahmano Vidwan
nabipeti
Nabipeti
kadachaneti
Kadachaneti
tasyesha
Tasyesha
eva sharira atma
Eva Sharira Atma
yah purvasya.
Yah Purvasya.
So let's see. Yataha vachaha nivartate apraapya manasasaha. That's the first statement. It says,
Sorry,
yeah.
Advait, actually that was section 4 on mind and intelligence. I have it, but I thought we did that just now.
Mm-mm.
Getting all confused.
Okay, I think that there's some issue with the book that you have.
Because
Sorry about that.
I thought we did the mantra just now, I thought. Maybe I see. Oh, I
It's
see.
the way it's structured that's a little confusing.
You did Brahman, the self and the body previously, I see. Okay, so I do have that mantra when you were reciting,
Mm-hmm.
that comes under mind and intelligence. Is that what it is? The others?
Yeah, we're getting ready to head to that intelligence. That's the next landmark. So this is still part of the, I'm not sure how it's classified in the text, but this is still part of the mind or emotional level called
Oh,
manomaya kosha.
okay. All right.
But you did see the mantra there.
Yeah, but it's under a different section. I
Yeah, I
mean,
think it's just organized wrong.
it's all, yeah. So,
Okay. Keep that place though where you saw vijnanam. Tasmad va etasmat manomayat anyontara. We'll come to that. Okay. So, yato vacho nivartante apra apya manasasaha. Here it's describing the Brahman as where the all speech along with the mind, apra apya manasasaha, with that mind, completely retreat. They turn back. They can't reach there. Meaning when we say Brahman, Satyam Jnanam Anantam, existence, consciousness, bliss, when we say those words, our mind always has the tendency to try to objectify it, but words can never objectify the self. But no word is possible without the self. So the speech is retreating. The mind is retreating. That's a good indication. So the meaning of that is go deeper, continue the inquiry, hasten slowly, meaning be steady and regular with your reflection. And let's keep looking deeper. Then Anandam Brahmano Vidvan. That Brahman, knowing it as your nature.
Yeah.
Vidvan, that's what that word means. Vidvan means somebody who knows this Brahman as their nature, which is Anandam. Nabhibheti kadachaneti. That signature of a realized person is Nabhibheti kadachaneti. They don't fear. They have no fear upon knowing that. The one who knows that Brahman as oneself, one's nature as that happiness. Why do they not have any fear? Because in their deep vision, they have that third eye opened. The third eye open means that they don't see the other. They're seeing an extension or expression of their own self in all interactions. So there's no recoiling there, or there's no overexcitement and then losing oneself, but it's just deeply quiet and balanced throughout their interaction. So it's interesting because here the shloka is not talking about the benefits, or we saw in this previous shlokas, you meditate on the physical nature of the anna, the body, or you meditate on the prana. Here, the Rishi says, march on. Discover that fearless self, the Brahman, whose nature is anandam. So that anandam is not the experiential pleasure that we get. That's a kind of and part of the emotional landscape, which can also be lost. So we're trying to find the lasting nature as Brahman. Now it says tasyesha eva sharira atma yaf purvasya. This mind is naturally the embodied soul of the pranamaya. Of this pranamaya, the manomaya seems to be the self of that. So the idea behind that is shariram means the container, and shariram means the contained, what's contained within that. So the mind is contained within that prana sheath. It's inner more. We saw that inner more and pervading. Now let's continue. Here we explore what's known as vijnanamaya. Now we're still in the landscape of mind,
Yeah.
but here we're operating at we're operating beyond an emotion level. We're talking about your own innate intelligence. And I would really call at this level, when we're operating at this level, we are really incredible leaders and role models. We're manifesting Devi Sampat, which means divine qualities. And we can do that as human beings, manifest goodness in this world. When we identify with that, we're operating at vijnanamaya kosha. So we'll see all that here. First, let's look at the mantra. Now, I'll just say this at the beginning, so make sure that everybody finds it in the book. It says here, tasmad va e tasmat manomayat. Do you see that, Catherine and Shishila?
No.
Tasmad va e tasmat manomayat anyontara atma vijnanamaya.
It's further down, I think. Tasmadva, tasmad, that one, antara atma, that? I can't tell.
Yeah,
Okay.
part of the second half.
Does it start tasmadva? Is that how you're starting?
Yeah, it starts off tasmad va, then it says tasman manomayat.
Yeah,
Shushila, you found it?
yeah.
Can
yeah.
you help Catherine on where it's at?
Sure. I see tasmadva, but I don't see what comes after,
Yes,
and
manomaya.
tasmadva is not repeated.
Manomaya is a new.
Yeah, you want to look for that key word is manomayat. You want to look for that.
Itas manomaya. Is that?
Yeah, yes. Okay,
I'll
well,
just listen.
yeah, sure. And then maybe as I'm going along chanting it, you might pick up one of those words and see it in the book. I'm not sure if it's structured properly. So We'll make sure to get another copy of that so it's easier to follow. Tasmadva etasma'an manomayat anyontara atma vijnanamaya te naisha purnaha sava esha purusha vida eva tasya purusha vidatam anvayam purusha vidaha tasya shraddeva shiraha ridam dakshinah pakshaha satyam uttarav pakshaha yoga atma mahapucham pratishtha tadapyesha sloko bhavati. All right. You can listen and repeat. Tasmadva
Tasmad
Tasmadva
etasma'an
etasman
etasmata
manomayat
manomaya
manomaya
anyontara
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 atma
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 vijnanamaya.
vijnanamaya
vijnanamaya
That's the key. Te naisha purnaha
tenaisha
tenaisha
purnaha
purnaha
sava esha
savaisha
savaesha
purusha vid purusha vida eva
purusha
purusha vida
videva
eva
tasya
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 purusha vedatam
purusha
purusha vida
vidatam
anvayam purusha vedaha
anvayam
avayam
purusha
purusha
vidaha
vida
tasya shraddeva shiraha
tasya
tasya
shradeva
shakti
shiraha
ridam dakshinah pakshaha
ritam
Rita
dakshinam
Dakshina
pakshaha
Pakshaha
satyam uttarav pakshaha
satyam
Satyam
uttara
Uttara
pakshaha
Pakshaha
yoga atma
yoga
Yoga
atma
Atma
mahapucham pratishtha
mahapucham
Mahapucham
pratishtha
Pratishta
tadapyesha
tadapyesha
Tadatyesha
sloko bhavati.
loko
Sloko
bhavati.
Bhavati.
Good. So vijnanamaya kosha is the deeper dimension of mind. It's the cognitive self, where we feel that clear discernment, cognition. This is in Vedanta. This level of mind we're talking is called the buddhi, and it's by this level of mind alone that we are engaging in the study and able to comprehend the meaning of the teaching. So this is the very deep part of you. And it's also a part where we can identify. So very strongly. So vijnanam is experienced mostly as the being an agent of action, the feeling that I do. I am the kartra bhoktritvam, that feeling of I do and I enjoy. I am the agent of action. And all that's held together by me. So here at this level, we're really talking about the buddhi and also its influence on ahankara, which means your sense of I with reference to what you're doing, what you're experiencing. But here it's interesting because instead of looking at it from the perspective of egoity, the Rishi is showing us that when this is in full operation, actually we're manifesting divine qualities. We're manifesting the the bird of this particular level is got faith as its head. Tasya shraddheva shiraha. Yeah, the head is shraddham. Ridham dakshina pakshaha. The right wing of the vijnanamaya is order, rhythm, harmony, your lifestyle. Satyam uttara pakshaha. The left wing is truth. Then what is it rooted in? What is vijnanam rooted in? Mahapucham pratishtha. That's pretty profound. The tail of this is maha, which means Ishvara. Ishvara here means the collective intelligence. So vijnanamaya kosha, oh, in yoga, atma, the chest is yoga. Yoga here means your discipline. Your discipline. So shraddha or faith, faith here can mean your higher trust that shapes your life, or maybe some assumptions that you have that are positive, or your commitments, that feeling of a kind of organizing commitment or principle by which you live. That's the head. The right wing is your lifestyle in order, the way that you order and structure things, and the harmony in which you shape yourself. The left wing is truth. Here, truth manifesting at the level of your body, mind, and speech, that integration. But all of this, and then the chest as your discipline. That discipline becomes enjoyable too when you're organizing yourself around what you care about, what you're passionate about, your shraddha. And that's rooted in Maha, the Ishvara, the collective intelligence. So when one is tapping into Vijnanamaya Kosha and deeply identified with Mano or Vijnanamaya Kosha, that collective intelligence is a good indicator because their mind is starting to operate or tap into the minds of others. Qualities like compassion and empathy for another, having healthy relationships is when one is maturing or identifying more with Vijnanamaya kosha. They're able to kind of peer into what other is going through, what somebody else is going through, and relate to them and see from their perspective, I would say. That's one way of understanding the tail as being that collective intelligence, Maha. So this particular kosha because we have a tendency to identify with what we do, even our virtuous actions, and the pleasure that we get, the very deep aesthetic pleasure that we get out of them. We identify with that. But it's also subject to loss, subject to change. This bird is also made of parts. That's the important thing here. So what we'll see next week is we'll look at an important shloka. So this shloka is kind of in the same rhythm as and in tune with those other on annamaya and pranamaya, where the rishi talks about what is somebody experiencing at the level of vijnanamaya. We're going to see that they are operating more in the spirit of collective effort, yetnyam. They also speak about this level of the mind being an organizing principle for all of our actions. So buddhi is like clear discernment. When we're operating here too, we feel that we're decisive. We know what we want. We know where we're headed. That we're operating at vijnanamaya. Then when one also abides in vijnanamaya too, there's an interesting statement that will be said, papmano hetva, that one's free from all sin, it seems, papa. Free from all feeling of negativity, really. They become more of a master problem solver. So we'll see that more when we meet next week. So we looked at pranamaya kosha, the vitality, which is observable, presented to you, something other than you, but never away from you. Then also mind, manomaya kosha. Manomaya kosha, meaning your emotional landscapes, seeing the emotions. So we have to, with practice, regularity, devotion, love, we have to learn how to watch, develop the ability to watch those emotions and then to manage them appropriately, depending on how far they've manifested or our ability to do that. So sometimes we don't enjoy that watchingness and we get carried away with emotions. So there we have to find a healthy way to release them or a healthy way to work with them, which we've explored a lot in our meditation classes. So here, Vijnanamaya, we'll look at more the profound state of kind of coming into sorrowlessness, kind of Vishoka state, where you feel at peace with what is. And that's the launch pad by which we get that meditative insight. There's something more or deeper sustaining this. So we're going to come to the final frontiers of Mithya before we come to the Satyam, the Brahman. Yeah, Sat. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, yes. What you saying there just now is something like vairagya, that dispassionate understanding of things and flow in and out of situations. You can be there and yet be an observer.
Yeah.
Because another thing that I'm thinking of here when we are doing the manomaya kosha here is sometimes emotions is governed not only by your own experience, but the experience of other people who you have read, the books that you have read,
Yes.
and how you incorporate that within your own understanding, not necessarily your life, because some of those situations you can't bring into your own life. They're so
Yeah.
far removed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some of that happens too, because
Yes.
everything you read should affect you in some small and sometimes indiscernible ways, but it must affect you.
Yeah,
And
it
these are
does.
the steps that lead you on. And another one also that I'm thinking
That's
of
a
is,
good insight.
yeah, another one is when we do meditation every day and we do it at different, well, at the same time every day, there's sometimes when you feel this Shakti, if I put it that way, populations, that tears, that emotions,
Yeah,
is that you have to go beyond that kind of emotion too, because it only lasts maybe for a minute, half a minute, not for too long,
true.
but you have to go beyond that too. That's what you're
True.
saying?
Yes. But we're not trying to discredit that or discount it
Yeah,
or we're watching that too though. So we're moving beyond that.
beyond that. Oh,
Yeah. So that is a manifest, it's a kind of rasa, which is positive because it creates a new impression in the mind that from within I'm experiencing joy. But that joy from within is not determined by an experience. So there, it's a very subtle invocation of that joy, still through an object. But here, the object is something subtle, like a certain mental state through reading something uplifting or through a meditative experience. But still, it's conditioned.
okay.
So one has to also watch that.
Oh,
Experientially, you enjoy that,
yeah.
you have that experience, you learn from it, it gives you deeper insight, and then you carry on. Because it can also be a trap to always keep hunting for experiences like that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's happened. Because
then you
if,
miss the profundity of being
yeah,
present.
because you might be doing this meditation every day, particular time, every day, forever. And sometimes you have that feeling, that inside, that flush of emotion or
Yeah,
connection. And then for a couple of days it does happen. Let's say a couple of weeks it does happen. It's like, what
sure.
did I do wrong? You
Yeah,
can't be
yeah,
dependent on,
yes.
you can't be dependent on. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Okay.
don't stress about that. Enjoy
Okay.
it, let it come, let it go. That's
Yep.
the attitude that we have. So there, that vairagya is necessary. Because
Yes.
otherwise we're kind of moving more into that emotional manomaya kosha when we want to try to repeat that and then reduce it to like a science where you can keep doing it again and again and again. It's a kind of secretly, to put it honestly, it's kind of like I've given that example where the dog is
Salivating.
biting a dry bone and
Oh,
it's getting some blood on its tongue and it thinks, "Ooh, this is tasty,"
that is
but it
on.
doesn't realize it's its own blood. So
Yes.
similarly, by a certain practice or subtle mode of thinking, it can invoke that rasa, that blood in us, like, "Ooh, this is good. It's giving me an experience." But still, we haven't recognized that the very basis of that is one's natural state, which is can't be displaced.
Because
So you're,
yes, sometime I use the example that Swami gave one time, and he says that it's like Carl Jung, the
oh
philosopher,
yeah,
but that when he was doing his meditation, he went through when he died and discovered his red book. And in that red book, he draw clumsy pictures.
oh yes, yes,
And what happened, what the Swami explained, Swami Bodhananda, what he
hmm
explained is that you go through that process and meditation and through that period of darkness, which you want to call Kali. When you
hmm
come out at the other end, then you self-realize. He didn't go through that end. He's stuck in the middle.
yes.
So
That's
we are
why
just,
yato vacho nivartante. That's why that particular shloka that said yeto vacho nivartante, keep going.
Keep going.
Don't
Just
stop there.
don't worry. Just go.
Mm-hmm. Another interesting story here to bring that's pertinent here before we close is you must be knowing that story of Hanuman ji, where he's flying to Lanka and the shadow wants to pull him down, his own shadow.
That's self-doubt.
That shadow is the unconscious mind
Yeah.
that you have to deal with, or the dark night of the soul experience. So there you don't fight with it. That's why also you have to find a new way to approach that. So in Hanuman's case, he made himself really big. And then that shadow kept opening his mouth. And instead of trying to avert it or avoid it, he just got really tiny again. And then soup, he slipped right through. So similarly, you have to find a way to meet with this darkness in your life. Say hi and greet it and then slip on, keep going through. But you can't fight it because it's an endless pit. It ends up in mithya. There's no end to it actually. That's the interesting mystery, is that it's the sense of being jivatvam, the sense of being limited, is from beginningless time. So you can't fight with that unconscious. It's a never ending. You can only slip through by grace. So that's also why the Ishvara Pranidhanam, Ishvara, because you recognize that there must be some reason for this, even if it's beyond my control. This is part of Ishvara's design. I trust that this is all coming for some reason, or there's some order to it. So then you relaxed, and then you also ask for help. So very good insight set, though. Yeah, what we read, the company that we keep, all that influences the manomaya kosha. And those experiences, we can appreciate them and then keep that detachment there still. So we'll speak on that a little bit more too next week. And then after vijnanamaya, the insight that comes is that there's something deeper, which is the source of this vijnanamaya. And that happens to be anandamaya. There's a very profound conversation that we'll have, because how is anandamaya also a kosha? And it kind of touches on what you were saying, Sat, is that we get experiential bliss through even subtle practices and subtle work. But even that too has a beginning and an end. So the Rishi says, no, you are the beginningless Brahman. Don't miss that. So that's where we find our final resting place in this analysis.
Okay.
So let us close with a prayer. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Hari Om.